Greetings, greetings. Good morning, everyone. We are joined today by Prime Minister Mia Mottley and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Bonjour. You're engaged. You can hear us.
I can hear you. Can you hear me, Bill?
Very well, sir. Good to see you. So you two, this is the first time you've appeared together as the good old SDGAG. Not everyone, not all at once. That's right. The Sustainable Development Goals and Advocates Group. So this, let me just say, as a citizen of the world, the word sustainable thrown around all the time. Thrown around sustainable this, sustainable that. What are you going to do, each of you, as advocates for sustainability? That's what this means. You have goals. What are your goals?
Starting with exactly what we're doing now. Good morning, Bill. Good morning, Justin. Good morning, everyone. Look, we're only going to move the needle, and you heard it from Hugh just now, when populations start to say enough is enough and that this is what matters to us. We want our spending to go in education. We want our spending to go in healthcare. We want our spending to remove the inequity that we're seeing in our societies. If we don't do it, people are going to continue with the status quo. And I think both Justin and myself understand that our voices have to be used to be able to excite ordinary citizens, not just other government leaders, but ordinary citizens wherever you are, because your voices make the difference to politicians, trust me.
You're talking about voting.
Not only voting, active citizenship. I mean, I was just telling you that we became a parliamentary republic on the 30th of November.
You spearheaded that. That was your... Sure, yes, applaud. That was your thing.
Thank you. And we did it for a number of reasons. Yes, because a Barbadian should want to become a Barbadian head of state and not someone from another country. But secondly, we had a charter that our parliament passed after consultation, and we introduced the concept of active citizenship, a duty to care for each other, a duty to work with each other. Because more often than not, and you heard it again from Hugh, complacency is the enemy of progress in the modern society. We are so intoxicated with what immediate gratification is, whether it is fast food, whether it is fast entertainment, whether it is fast anything, whether it's fossil fuels, using and creating all of the ease that we can have. But there are consequences in the long run to all of this. And therefore, unless we get our citizens to realize that each one matters and each one can and must play a role, then what you have is a lot of apathy and a lot of things going and being driven by those who have a profit to make rather than those of us who need to care with each other so that we can have this sustainable future of which you spoke.
Sustainability is the key, and we're going to have, for quite a while, we're going to have fossil fuels. And we're going to have to, the big idea is we have to generally, as Hugh was alluding to, we have to redistribute wealth.
Yep, and we have to balance.
Yes, balance, that's one of your faves. Yep. So Prime Minister Trudeau, Canada is going to greatly increase its sustainability investment over the next 5 years. Go ahead, tell us your sustainability goals.
Well, listen, first of all, Bill, it's great to see you again. Mia, so happy to join with you in this event and this co-leadership that we have on advocacy. I want to pick up right where Mia left off, and the idea of engaged citizenship. I mean, one of the challenges that we have in our democracies now in general is everything is designed not just in our lives with fast food and quick solutions to everything, but even in our democracies. Everything tends to be short-term. We plan for the next mandate. We get elected on how we're going to respond to people in the short term. There's not a lot of long-term thinking that comes in. And that's where young people are so important in the conversation, because young people are natural long-term thinkers. You're thinking 2 or 3 decades ahead what the sweep of your life might look like, as opposed to people who are stuck in the immediacy of their career, their mortgage, their vote right now, and how it might change their life next year, not the next decade. So we have to step back from the short-term thinking that got us into this challenge and move beyond it. And that's a big piece of it. But the other part is that people despair that their actions today can actually have a positive impact tomorrow and for decades to come, because the challenges seem so big. So people both, feel disillusioned, but also angry that they're not having an impact. And that's where we need to pull people together and show, just like we did on the pandemic, just like we're doing on climate change, that individual actions, not just being responsible in your own life, but also how you push your community, how you push your democracy, how you push your world to change really, really matters. So it's not just about taking sustainability into everyday actions, but it's making it part of our thinking about the broad impacts of everything we do and the deep impacts through the next generation of everything we do. And that's where stepping up on the big things that have put us off track on the sustainable development goals, whether it's climate change, whether it's and the impacts of climate change, hitting harder and harder with extreme weather events, whether it's the challenges of the pandemic that certainly upended a lot of progress we were making by making the most vulnerable even more vulnerable, or whether it's the rise of global conflict like the war in Ukraine, where we're going to need to counter distractions and challenges like that. We need to get back on track for 2030 because we are running out of time.
Yeah, we're halfway to 2030, just about. You were going to say something, Mia.
No, I was going to respond earlier to two things broadly. We're at a stage now where almost everything that is causing us difficulty is global in nature. The pandemic is global, the climate crisis is global, the chronic NCDs is
You were well known in Glasgow for pointing out that.
Don't remind me. The antimicrobial resistance battle that I'm fighting with WHO once again, and that's simply the fact that our bodies are not fighting off the superviruses with the help of the antibiotics that we have. We haven't had any new antibiotics since 2000, the year 2000, and it's going to be the biggest killer by 2050. Much more, it's already the third largest killer in the world, but we don't talk about it. We're not investing in it. Now, the irony is that all of those global crises are, as Justin said, motivated and solved by personal and local action. And we seem not to get the connection sufficiently linked together that we can get it right. If not, we wouldn't be 26 months into a global pandemic or 27 months or whatever it is. So one, I think that we have to start to recognize that our conversations have to be nuanced and balanced too, because the 60
Well, what do you mean by that, nuanced and balanced?
Because the 60-second soundbite or the 4 inches of four column inches do not allow us to give people the complexity of it. Let's take the same arguments and discussion in climate crisis. There is no doubt that we have to get rid of coal. There is no doubt that we want to see a reduction in oil. But there is a reality that natural gas is going to be that bridge, because we simply can't move to where we are. We don't even have enough capacity. In Barbados, I'd like somebody right now to give us some long-term commercial batteries for the Barbados Light and Power, which is owned by a company in Canada, Justin. Can you do it? If you can do it, that's great. And why? I met with them last week, and they told me that they can't get any supply until December 2023. I announced a tax holiday for electric vehicles in my country, yet we can't get supply. So let's understand that simply having a movement that does not appreciate supply issues, that does not appreciate the reality of our existence, is not going to get us anywhere. And what it is going to do is frustrate those who believed in the moment, such that we lose them in the battle. 2050 is supposed to be net zero. But net zero doesn't mean zero fossil fuels. Net zero, according to the International Energy Agency, is still 20%.
20% of the energy would still be
from fossil fuels and probably
ideally,
gas.
It would be natural gas.
That's the point.
Because the combustion product is just carbon dioxide. There isn't all these aren't all these particulates. And people have talked about bridge fuels since 1980 something.
That's why you are so important to this discussion, Bill, because it is and must be science-driven. So
science-driven? Why, that's wild. No, so appreciate
especially
you guys.
in certain countries.
You're talking about the pandemic, and so the reason we are all here is because our ancestors survived the Spanish flu of what came to be called the Spanish flu of 1918. And in 5 years, people had kind of let go of worrying about it. The flu had mutated several times, and the same thing's happening now, but we had science. We cut that time in half with vaccines. But if you, as you pointed out in Glasgow, if you only, I throw these on the floor on purpose, if you had, because there's a lot of gravity here, no, the whole room, everywhere you go. So if you have this idea where only the developed world can get the vaccines, that's, as you pointed out, that's ineffective because we all breathe the same air. And so along this line is, to me, this not only this perspective of individuals, but it's this redistribution of wealth.
And that's where I want to pick up. Because if you have financial institutions today saying that they're not going to support the extraction of any new natural gas, it means that only those who have will continue to dominate that 20%. And therefore countries like Ghana, countries like Guyana, countries like Barbados that have natural gas resources will be left out. Now that doesn't mean, because in our case, we literally want, and we have just given every homeowner in Barbados the right to have either photovoltaic or micro turbines on their houses, because the sun, the wind, and the oceans don't belong to anybody. They belong to the patrimony of the country. And if therefore we're going to allow foreign investment to come in, it can only come in after local population have been able to benefit from the resources of that. And it allows them to own their houses by de-risking them for mortgages.
So,
but similarly, internationally, that's what you need, and that's the redistribution of wealth of which you spoke. If we don't redistribute it locally, if we don't redistribute it internationally, then the world is going to end up being a very unsafe place in which to live.
So that's the thing. Inequity leads to unrest. So, Prime Minister Trudeau, you alluded to the war in Ukraine. And I think that really highlights the problem you have when you're buying fuel from somebody who's shelling your cities and destroying them. It leads to some bad decisions. So would you, sir, please expand on that a little?
Well, listen, I mean, first of all, as Mia pointed out, we need to transition. We need to manage the transition off of oil and gas. But it doesn't mean we can suddenly end it today or tomorrow. We're going to continue to be reliant on it for a long time into the come. We need to reduce the carbon emissions. We need to clean it up. We need to invest in those transitions as much as we can. And that's where Europe is realizing that its dependency on Russian oil and gas is a real problem, not just geopolitically, but also in terms of getting to net zero by 2050. That's why we've been working, I've been speaking with the Chancellor of Germany and others around LNG, not just because natural gas...
Liquefied natural gas, LNG. Yeah.
But it's not just at that transition. The same infrastructure you use for LNG, you can use for hydrogen, you can use for ammonia, which actually doesn't have the kind of carbon emissions that we're trying to reduce. So we can accelerate, and we need to use this crisis and all crises as an opportunity to accelerate through the transformation we need. And that's where what Russia is doing, both in Ukraine around energy, but also the impact Russia's having on food prices around the world by preventing the grain that's sitting in grain elevators in Ukraine from getting out to the Middle East, to North Africa, as it normally would. That is putting extreme stress on the world as well. And we're going to have to work together, as Mia has pointed out, as you've pointed out, using science, using thoughtful, longer answers. We're filled with short, easy, quick answers that fit on bumper stickers, whether it's in politics, whether it's on social media. Everyone wants an easy answer to a complicated question. Well, we have to start using science. We have to start laying out thoughtful paths that aren't just going to feel good for the next 6 months, but actually take us through the next 6 decades. And that's where the conversation that Mia's leading, that we're participating in, that all of us need to do through Global Citizen, understanding the urgency. It is now. It's right there in big letters behind you. If we don't start taking action in real ways and not pie in the sky, oh, let's just stop fossil fuels tomorrow. But no, how we manage a transition that no one's ever been able to do in the past. How you change from one type of energy to another. How we fight climate change in a way that, as you keep pointing out, Bill, brings everyone along, takes care of people in the global south who don't have the luxury of being able to install solar panels, who need to have those investments, which is why Canada's doubled its international financing for climate change. We need to keep moving all together, because if we don't, none of the rest will matter.
There you go, everybody. And I'd just like to point out, we're here in New York City. Tell us how you really feel. Yeah, we're here in New York City, and you can find pictures of the streets right here where the horse manure was up to your knees. And people decided that was not really the best way to get around. And I think all the time, my grandfather was in World War I, and he rode a horse, apparently. But 25 years later, nobody rode a horse. Everything changed in just 25 years. So we can do this, people. The longest journey begins with but a single step. Let's go. So when we get this paralyzed by the problem seems so big that we can't address it. That's where I think, that's what I believe both of you are driving at, is get citizens to work together right now. We have to work the problem from the top and the bottom. Who's ever in charge makes a huge difference. Look at these two, my friends. And then when you think of the guy in charge of Russia, there's some issues with him. And so with this in mind, what specifically do you have your citizens doing right now? First of all, you got rid of the monarchy. What else are we doing?
I think that getting people to understand that they have a duty to care for each other and a duty to act together is the most important thing. But at the same time, it all starts with you. Every civilization has a way of telling you that the journey begins with one step or one action. And in our country, we say one blow is kill all cow. And that's just simply to say one blow at a time, one action at a time. And I want people to take those bite-sized chunks, because then they understand collectively. And that's why I support Global Citizens so much, because I think that this entity is cutting across the barriers, it's using the technology, and it's being strategic. And when I call for global, moral, global strategic leadership, it's because we have to do the right thing, it's because we have to be strategic, because we can't do everything, and it's because it's global in scale, because most of our problems, as I said earlier, are global. So if we get the link between individual action and global consequences, then we'll go in the right direction. The problem is not them. The problem is a handful of political leaders who still want to see the world in the old imperial order, who still want to see a United Nations that leaves out 2/3 of the nations of the world, and who still do not make enough time to recognize that a simple use of SDRs can make, by central banks, it's not money being spent.
Oh, SDRs, tell us about SDRs.
That's just the currency used by the IMF in order to be able to give central banks the ability to be able to use the reserves in a positive way.
Special drawing rights.
Special drawing rights, that's
special
all it is.
drawing rights, your special drawing rights. But you guys trade them. I say you guys,
well,
countries trade them.
Except that when special drawing rights are given out, the majority of them go to countries that don't need it. And we keep forgetting that 15% of climate finance actually goes to climate vulnerable countries. 75% of the world's poor people don't live in poor countries, they live in middle income countries. But yet we continue to lend money on concessional rates only on the basis of historic past income, when we should be lending it on the basis of who is actually climate vulnerable, who is going to incur a loss of more than 5% of GDP if they have a climatic event that is either immediate or slow onset. And that's what we need now in this world. And if we can get, there were special drawing rights that were unused, believe it or not, from the 2008-2010 crisis. And they're sitting down there and God knows where. And in the meantime, you have poor people not being able to eat, people being forced to go on the road and go to new countries as migrants that they really don't want to do, and people just being exposed to the most awful abuse. And at the same time, you're not losing any money by using these special drawing rights. It's just pledging them. And I hope, Justin, that we can get you and a number of the other G7 and G20 countries to simply say that the moment has come when the world has to intervene and to recognize that 1945 created Bretton Woods institutions that are no longer appropriate for the 21st century. 1945, and that's why we want to host a conference in Barbados, Hugh, Bretton Woods Revisited, because it's appropriate that a country that didn't exist as an independent state should be among those saying, let us get the World Bank doing global public goods. How does a World Bank exist as an international bank for reconstruction and development, and the majority of middle-income countries in this world cannot get a single cent to help them through the pandemic in the last 2 years because they tell Barbados and Bahamas, you're too rich to borrow from us? We then had to get a special exemption on the pandemic, and now we're being told, oh, don't extend that to climate. That doesn't mean that you can get it for climate.
Prime Minister, tell us how you really feel.
Give me a chance and I will.
I think like everyone, I could just listen to Mia all day. You know, you are such a strong voice for the Global South and for what needs to happen. On special drawing rights, you know Canada agrees with you, and we've pledged our special drawing rights to Ukraine, to the Global South, and we'll continue to make sure that we're using them, because you're absolutely right. We get granted them like many rich countries, and we don't need them. So they need to be put to use where they are. But I will pick up on one thing you said, and you said it extremely eloquently, as you always do, that citizen engagement, that the choices people make really, really matters, and it has to come from the ground up as well as from the top down. But let's not forget that top-down part of it. And citizens affect that directly with the most powerful thing they can do in democracies, which is vote. And that is in electing governments that actually take these responsibilities seriously. One of the challenges that we all have, is making sure that we're bringing our citizens along with us, but we're also leading in the right direction. Canada is one of the handful of countries that produce the most fossil fuels in the world. We need to be part of getting off of that, and that's where we're doing that, and that's where we're leading in ways that countries that don't make fossil fuels or don't extract fossil fuels have slightly easier time of it. But Canada's going to continue to step up. But that's also where we're moving towards. You talked about your batteries challenge earlier, Mia. We're moving into critical minerals to make sure that Canadian mining, which is done more environmentally responsible, done with better labor standards than you find in Russia or in China or in other parts of the world, is competitive on the world stage. We're also moving forward on electric vehicles. Canada is a manufacturer of automobiles. We are stepping up by transforming our producers to be more for electric vehicles, so we can not just meet the demand in Canada, being 100% net zero electric vehicle sales by 2035, but we're going to be able to send some to you too in Barbados.
I'd like you to open a plant there, then I'll get the vehicles and the jobs.
Guys, after you drive an electric car, you will never go back to a gas-powered car. They're just so much more pleasant. And by the way, the car doesn't know where the electricity came from.
I just want to say, Bill, Justin is right, and people need to vote. And we are in a country where the number of people who vote is in the minority. And I can't understand how people expect to influence their future if that first most fundamental right is not exercised.
So if you don't want to vote, would you just shut up and let the rest of the people who do want to vote make changes? Everybody, voting is how we are going to change the world. And I am just honored to be here with you both. This is just fantastic. I mean, you're visionaries. We're going to work the problem from the bottom up. Then we're going to elect officials who are going to work the problem, these complicated problems, from the top down. And together, it's not called local citizen. It's not called county citizen. It's called global citizen, because we are all in this together. Thank you so much. Let's change the world, everyone.
Thank you so much. Good to see you, Justin. Thank you.
Justin.
Hey.
Merci, merci. All right.